We're in Daf Hey. The Gemara is looking for the source of Aseder Halusase. And so the Gemara is looking for a source of Aseder Halusase. And the Gemara says that in order to be able to learn it from tzitzis, the smuchin alone would not suffice. We need for it to be mufne. And there's nothing mufne, there's nothing extra in tzitzis and shatnes. And so even though that it is true that aseder halusase by shatnes, by tzitzis, that you can wear shatnes, but nevertheless, it's not mufne. And the Gemara says, okay, so that's according to Chachamim, not like Rabbi Shmuel, because according to Tanavei Rishmal, it's mufne in that you have Tzemer Pishtim as extra, but according because he holds that every beged is Tzemer Pishtim, but according to Rava that says all clothing are mechuyev and tzitzis, meaning that beged Pishtim is not extra because it has to tell you over here that specifically it should be beged Pishtim. So then I don't have any extra words, and if I don't have extra words, so what is the source of Kalayim Metzitzis? Sorry, what is the source of Aseder Halusase? We can't learn it from Kalayim Metzitzis, even though that it is true, but we don't learn it from there. So the Tosfos points out over here that really the Gemara could have answered and said, well, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say that you need a mufne, that you need it open. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that said I need mufne, but not according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Chachamim, it could be that I can learn from smuchim, even though that it is not open, it is not an extra word. That's the drasha. That's Tosfos' essential question. Tosfos says, no, we don't want to say. We want to be able to say that this is true according to everybody. However, Rashi didn't make any such point. And the truth is, this is a Yesodistic thing in regards to how to understand the drasha of smuchin. We saw machlekes in the previous daf of whether or not by smuchin, meaning something that is the juxtaposition, the smuchin of the psukim, teach us a certain din, like a hekish. Welcome, Aki. Thank you for the chalent and thank you for the delivery. Appreciate it so much. We saw last week that there's a machlokes in regards to whether psukim that are near each other, and we learn a halacha from one to the other, that it has to be mufne, meaning there has to be an extra word in either or both places in order to be able to learn one from the other. Rabbi Yehuda says you need mufne, and the Chachamim say you don't. The Ritva, Rashba, and some other Rishonim over there, the Meiri, they say this is only true. That machlokas is only true in regards to the drasha itself. But if I want to learn from that drasha to the rest of the Torah, if I want to make this a generalized concept, everybody would agree I need it to be mufne. I need it to be an extra word. So in our case over here, what was Tosfos' point? Why do I need? Why did the Gemara ask, according to the Chachamim, how do I learn? Since it's not mufne, I don't have the extra words of beged or pishtim, tzemer or pishtim, because we don't know that every garment is tzemer or pishtim. So I need the extra limud. I need the extra. I don't have extra words. So Tosfos said, well, that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda that I need extra words. Why didn't the Gemara say that? The Rabbanan don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi, perhaps, but for sure, the Rashba and the Ritva hold. Everybody agrees. It's true for tzitzis itself. I can learn from one to the other according to the Chachamim, even if it's not an extra word. But to learn from there the concept of aseder halusase for the rest of the Torah, to say just like by tzitzis, the mitzvah of tzitzis is going to allow me to wear even shatnez, So too everywhere else, asay derech halosasay. I can't learn that from a smuchin alone unless it has mufne. Everybody would agree to that. So this is a drash concept that's very important to know, that according to some Rishonim, you cannot learn a klal for the rest of the Torah from a smuchin if it is not mufne. Is that clear? Rabbi Coulter,
are you trying to explain why Rashi didn't say anything?
Correct. And just pointing out that the Rishonim disagree with Tosfos and say that even the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda are going to say that it's not only Rabbi Yehuda who says that you need the extra word in order to compare and make a smuchin. Everybody would agree you need that.
Because the Gemara is trying to show that it would be true everywhere?
Correct, because we want to learn asay derech halosasay not for tzitzis. We want to learn it from there to every case.
Okay.
Rabbi Coulter, you made a face. Good. Okay. So the Gemara says, okay, so where are we going to learn this from? So the Gemara says we're going to learn it from Rosh. The mitzvah of a mitzvah to shave his head as a part of his coming tahara process, where the Torah says that he should as kol sa'arai, all of his hair has to be shaven, and it says specifically as rosh. That's included. So why did the Torah have to say it again? So since it already says that you should not shave your head, perhaps you can't shave the size of your head, the payas, even if you're a mitzvah. Therefore, the Torah needed to say Rosh as well. And the Gemara adds, and this opinion says that akafa kol rosh, meaning even if you shave the entire head, not only the sides, does it count as akafa, and the isser is there. So therefore, we're going to be able to learn asay derech halosasay. So Rashi throws in here alma shme'inan kra the asay asay derech halosasay. So that we see the Torah says that by adding the word roisha, that asay derech halosasay, and from here we're going to learn it to elsewhere. And then Rashi throws in hilkach. Therefore, it's chalela mesar erva. So we need the word allow to say that erva is prohibited to yibum, because without for that I would have said asay derech halosasay. Now, there are multiple questions on this Rashi. Question number one is, what's it doing here? We haven't concluded the Gemara yet, and this is not going to be the conclusion of the Gemara. So why did Rashi bring in the original question? It's true, Rashi is correct. Sort of Rashi in the middle of a 3-page sugya is reminding us, by the way, the way we got here was because we wanted to know, why would I have thought that you can even do a yibum on your sister-in-law? That you need a special drasha of Allah to tell you, no, in erva you're not allowed to do it. What I need that pasuk for? In any case, there's an isser, so you can't do the mitzvah. No, so I needed to tell you because asay derech halosasay, right? So great. Once we know the concept of asay derech halosasay, I need a special pasuk of Allah. But we already know that from the beginning. And now the Gemara is going to the source, and at the end, the Gemara is going to bring it back around and say, bring it home and say, okay, here's what we need it for. Why does Rashi bring it in right here? That's question number one. Question number two is, it's the Gemara had two questions. When the Gemara started, it said, number one, how do I even know asay derech halosasay? But the Gemara had a more important question. Even if you say asay derech halosasay, even if you're going to say that a positive mitzvah is going to supersede or set aside a negative mitzvah, but that's only a losasay greda, a simple losasay, but not one that has kares. Here we're talking about shaving the side of your head. Shaving the side of your head is not kares, and Rashi's deducing from there, learning from there, saying, since we're going to see from Rosh that a mitzvah can shave his side of his head, So therefore, we're going to say that an erva can also be permitted for yibum, and I need the special teaching to say not. I need the special limit of aleh not. What are you talking about? That's a list of sheyesh bekares. How can you compare one to the other?
Can you repeat your second question? Yeah. What? Can you repeat your first question again?
What's it doing here? Like we're in the middle of the sugya of aseder chalisase. We started the sugya with the question of why do I need a drasha for aleh, and why would I even have thought that you could do yibum on an erva? So Gemara says because aseder chalisase, because a positive commandment can supersede a negative commandment. Very nice, but we didn't finish the sugya yet. We're in the middle of sugya. In one line, the Gemara is going to push this away and go into another 2 pages of aseder chalisase. Why are we jumping now to the conclusion? It seems out of place. You don't like that? What's your?
No. It that I don't know. I mean, I'm not holding. That didn't bother me as much. The second of why you're comparing, like they're not all los says are created equal.
Yeah. So that's a very important question. So let's address first the mafarshim. Simply, they say to the first answer, look, we've gone through an entire attempt of tzitzis. We were falling away from tzitzis and bringing something else in. So Rashi is sort of taking us back to the original concept. What brought us into the sugya? We're looking for a source of a seder chalosase, which would make it so that you would think you could do yibum with an erva, and therefore we need a pasuk of aleh. Rashi is sort of reorienting us to where we are in the grand scheme of the sugya. Okay, perhaps. But the second question is still a question. So the Minchas Chinuch asked this question, and the Minchas Chinuch wants to offer an interesting concept and proof from Iran. We'll have to see whether there's a proof from the Ram. But the concept he says is one los aseh, aseh can supersede. 2 los asehs, an aseh cannot supersede. That two los asehs is more severe. Sorry, not 2 los asehs. 2 times transgressing 1 los aseh is more severe, and that's too much for an aseh to supersede. To aseh der los aseh v'los aseh. That we don't say. And therefore, if it can over here, and by payas, by shaving your head, there's a los aseh on either side. And so when the Metzora shaves his head, he shaves the right side, then he shaves the left side. So he transgresses los akifu once, he transgresses los akifu twice. 2 times transgressing is the equivalent, or the way he says is even worse than a los aseh sheyesh bakaris. 1 los aseh, so the hierarchy according to Minchas Chinuch is this: simple los aseh. Even worse than that is a los aseh sheyesh bekaris. Even worse than that is twice transgressing a los aseh. His proof is, and we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, his proof is from Iran in regards to somebody who's going to transgress, is in pikuach nefesh, and he needs to eat, and it's Yom Kippur. So the question is, he can eat nevela, or we're going to shecht for him, and he can eat kosher. So which one should we do? Nevela or shechting? Shechting is a single isser. Nevela is an isser for every kazayas, so it's better to shecht, even if it's a kares. So we see multiple isurim of nevela is worse than one single act of shechting, even if the shechting is a kares. That's his proof from the Ran. Again, the Ran says if I'm going to shecht on Shabbos, that's a kares. If I'm going to eat an nevela, it's a simple lav, but it's better to do 1 kares of shechting on Shabbos for a pikuach nefesh, rather than doing multiple times a single isser.
You're saying Yom Kippur that it's
not Yom Kippur. Let's say Shabbos, regular Shabbos, shechting of Shabbos. Okay, so this
It's a
person is
funny way to
ill.
look at it. I mean, you could also say, every couple of hairs. So if you shave a little bit and you shave a little bit and you shave a little bit and you shave a little, it's just 200 losas the year, between all your hairs on both sides. That's it's 2 versus 200 once you're looking at it like that.
Perhaps it could be even worse. But the question is his proof from the Ran a good proof that transgressing multiple times is worse than a kares? So there are many that disagree with his connection and say, no, you can't compare aseder halosase, where the Torah tells you to transgress the Isser, to a dichui of pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means that, look, the prohibition is there. It's simply that you have to save a life. And so therefore pikuach nefesh says transgress. The Torah says transgress. It's not aseder halosase. There's an interesting question. We know that the Torah says v'chai bahem, live by the Torah. Is that a positive mitzvah and tells us supersede all the isurim, or is it the construct of the mitzvah that all the entire Torah is based on v'chai bahem? It's not a mitzvah v'chai bahem. It's the condition. You have to live by the Torah. So the Torah wants you to do the mitzvahs in a manner that you're going to live. In either case, we can't compare that to where we're looking for where aseder, let's just say where aseh is going to supersede. It's true, it cannot supersede multiple lavin, but it may be less than kares. When we're looking at v'chai behem, we're looking at pikuach nefesh, we're looking at how to help someone who is ill. We're going to do a single isser versus multiple isurim, but it doesn't mean that aseder chalas is worse. So there are many different answers given to this. I want to say over from my Rabbi Eli Baruch Finkel, who was Raman Amir, and he said, "What's the Gemara's response to this?" And this is what this is really doing here. The Gemara's response is, no, we can't learn from shaving, from cutting the head. It's true. The Torah does say, that the shaving of the Metzorah supersedes, is going to set aside the Isser of shaving the side of your head of the payas, but that only applies to men. It doesn't apply to women. And since it doesn't apply to everybody, it's a weaker Isser, it's a weaker prohibition, and therefore aseder chalos. So Rashi says, you know what? This is a good source for erva, because the erva is a Isser she'ena shava bakol. It's only the relative that this is prohibited to. It's only specific people that this is prohibited to. In fact, the brother, if there were 2 yavams, one is going to be allowed to do yibum to this person and one's not. So it's a ena shava bakol in as much as that it's prohibited to this person and not to that person. Therefore, Rashi says, if you're telling me that we can't learn from Metzorah because it's a ena shava bakol, it's not equal to everybody. Well, actually, erva is also not equal to everybody, so I can still learn it from there. That's what Rashi is saying, that in essence, we still have the basis for the question of what our starting point after this answer. So that's what Rashi says.
We're work in the Shach of Ataria. Rashi's explaining before the Gemara said that.
Right. Look at the next Rashi. The Nashamena Bachlala Kafa Beperikama de Kedushin. Tama Belav Dachosisha Shekashem Shim Muzar Alea Kachim Muzaris Alav. Nechsiv Hanafashes. So Rashi has to find a new type of Shava Bakol. Rashi now had to come up with a new Shava Bakol. It's even though that she's not prohibited to everybody, but she's prohibited to both him and her in the erva. So Rashi needed to first introduce, in order to get to the next Rashi and tell us how the answer answers the question, Rashi had to first present the question properly. We're looking for a source for erva, and since we're looking for a source for erva, that we would have thought erva is permitted, we need even something that's Eina Shava Bakol. And therefore Rashi said, wait, no, it's Eina Shava Bakol, but Erva is Shava Bakol. And that's what Rashi is responding. Rashi needed to, in order to define the question and answer of the Gemara, as Max is saying, the Shaka V'Tara of the Gemara is dependent upon us understanding what the basis of our discussion is. The basis of our discussion is we're looking for a source of why I would have thought that Erva is permissible in Yibum. Because Aseidah Chalosa say, wait, but Aseidah Chalosa say, where do you know that from? From Mitzora shaving his head, even though that there's a Isser L'Takifu. No, but that's a Eina Shava Bakol. Even though that Erva also is in a certain way Eina Shava Bakol. Rashi says, no, but it is Shava Bakol in a certain way. It applies to both men and women in as much as both parties in the Erva are prohibited. Even though it's not a Shava Bakol in as much as that it doesn't apply to other men, to other non-relatives. Nevertheless, it will be a Shava Bakol in as much as it applies to both parties in the Isser. Both the man and the woman in the Isser are Shava Bakol, and that's more severe than Erva. Max says that you understand the Shagvatariat now according to that? So that's that Rashi in the two Rashis require this understanding. I want to talk about one other point in Rashi. In the next Rashi, Rashi says, what's the source that both the man and the woman in an Erva situation are going to be a part of the prohibition? So Rashi says, because it says, the souls that do this, both the man and the woman. So many Mefarshim ask, why did Rashi need that for? We know as a general rule, all prohibitions in the Torah are men and women are equally prohibited. It's interesting that we happen to be talking about the one place that's not true by shaving the payas, as we mentioned on Sunday. There's actually one place that's not applicable, that the Isser Torah does not apply to men and women. But nevertheless, we do know as a general rule, every Isser Torah applies to both men and women. So what's Rashi saying here? What I need the extra teaching from Hanafashas. So the Gemara actually in Bava Kama has a drasha from here. Really, the Gemara asks, how did Esther marry Achashverosh? Erva is something that you have to even give your life for. You know that there are three mitzvahs, three prohibitions that are Yahareg Val Yavar. It's better to allow yourself to be killed than to transgress, and Erva is one of them. So Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Davim, Avodah Zarah, murder, and Erva. So how did Esther do this? So the Gemara answers, Esther Karka Olam. She was not reciprocal, and she was just the recipient. Okay. So then, if somebody is not acting in an Isser, so then there's no prohibition. Then there's no prohibition. Then there's no Yarek Val Yav. That's the Gemara. So Gemara. So the Gemara Bava Kama says, okay, so there may be the prohibition of Erva does not apply to the woman; it only applies to the man. The Gemara has a Hanafashas as a drasha for that, and that's this Rashi here. That really Erva, I need a special limud to tell me that it applies to women as well, and this is the and this is the Shaka B'Tari of the Gemara. Even though that usually we have all mitzvahs, all isurim apply to men and women, but there are some exemptions. There are some exclusions to that. Payas doesn't apply to women. Erva, I may have thought, does not apply to women. And therefore, they would both be Eina Shava Bakol. And therefore, I could learn just as the Torah says, Aseder Halosase by Metzora, just as it says, Aseder Halosase by Peyus and Metzora, that because it's Eina Shava Bakol, so too by Erva. And Yibum, the mitzvah of Yibum is going to supersede and tell me that for Erva as well. So Rashi says, no, we have an afashas that tells me it applies to women as well, even though that they're not necessarily involved in the Isser itself. They're receiving the Isser. They're not actually participating, perhaps, and nevertheless, they are prohibited in it. So therefore, it's a Shava Bakol. That's the Shaka V'Tarya of Rashi in this part of the Gemara.
Is that Baba Kama? Is that on your Gimel or your base? What daf is that? Make me feel good, because I think I remember there's a Tosos there. Is that also with
it is
David Melech?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't remember the daf. It's about there. You remember it? Which side of the daf?
Base. I'm a base.
I'm a base. Yeah, long tesis and narrow long tesis. Yeah, very good.
I feel very good that I don't remember anything in my life. Ask me what day I was born on. I don't even know. But
you remember that. Very good.
So, if I understand this correctly, we're considering Shava Bakol by really two different. There's like two different dimensions of Shava Bakol, because one is the in the Isser of Erva, the two parties, the man and the woman, and Rashi is being mechadish that it's really the Isser is on both sides, so it's not Shava Bakol. It is Shava Bakol with regards to that. But you said that earlier, one of the explanations for why Rashi is throwing that sort of out of place reference to our initial question was because it's Eino Shava Bakol with regards to the man, and there's it applies to one man but not to his brother if there are two Yevams, gotcha. So it seems like we're playing a little bit loose with the how many applying Shava Bakol in multiple different dimensions.
Right, and we talked about this a little bit on Sunday in the intro shir, that there are multiple ways of understanding Eina Shava Bakol. In fact, by Nazir, which is the next Gemara, we saw two different Gemaras. The Gemara Mem Aleph in Nazir, and the Gemara Mem Ches in Nazir. One says that Nazir is a Shava Bakol, because anybody can be a Nazir. And one says Nazir is not a Shava Bakol, because not everybody is a Nazir. And so, yeah, this is not unique, and we have multiple ways of seeing Eina Shava Bakol. It's Eina Shava Bakol in certain ways, and Tosfos does have such a language. Tosfos says this is really Eina Shava Bakol versus something that's just not Shava Bakol, because this doesn't apply to all women versus this applies to some and not to all, right? L'mashal by Kohen versus what's more Eina Shava Bakol. So we see that there are in Tosfos at least he learns that there are dargas, there are levels of Shava Bakol. This is equal to everyone, and this is somewhat everyone can apply to, but not everyone. And then this is even less applicable, narrower application. This is even narrower. So there is that as well. The sugya of Shava Bakol or Eina Shava Bakol is really a large one with a lot of questions that need to be answered and understanding when we apply Eina Shava Bakol. In any case, so the Gemara went on to say that, okay, so we're not going to learn it from the payas, we're going to learn it from the beard. And then the Gemara says, no, we can't learn it from a kohen. So we can't learn it from a kohen because a kohen has extra mitzvahs. And so therefore we're going to learn it. And we're going to go back to learning from Roshai, and it's since the Torah needed to say it twice, once for its beard, and one's for the head, it tells us that one of them is to tell you that even though Eina Shava Bakol, even by Shava Bakol, Aseder Cholosasi. So we learned it from a Nazir. And we saw on Sunday, we discussed that Nazir is Yeshnan B'She'ela. And Nazir, you can renege on the Naziris and retroactively undo the Naziris, and therefore it's a weaker Isser. I want to go into an important halachic limud for Yibum that we had discussed. We had asked earlier in the sugya of Aseder Cholosase that it's true this brother, the surviving brother, has a mitzvah. The surviving brother has a mitzvah of Yibum, and he has an Isser of Erva, and for him, the Asay can be the Cholosase. But the woman, we said, doesn't have the mitzvah. There's no mitzvah on her, and therefore, how come for her there's Asay the Cholosase? And we mentioned from many Achronim that they say that the concept of Asay the Cholosase means that the mitzvah must be done. And therefore, even if she doesn't have the mitzvah, she's participating in the mitzvah, and she has to participate in a way that will supersede and allow for the mitzvah to be done, even with the Isser. However, the Aruch Laner wants to prove from this Tosfos on our daf here that actually she does have a mitzvah. She does have a mitzvah. The Tosfos asks a question. The Tosfos has a number of questions by Kohen and the mitzvahs of Kahanim. And Tosfos asks the losasei of Kohen Gadol is a lav she'ena shava bakol, and a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a divorcee or someone who's been married before, and that's a lav she'ena shava bakol. And yet we see that there's the Yibum can take effect. So Tosfos is asking from there. So the Aruch HaNer asks a question. Wait, if he has a mitzvah and he has an Isser, if his mitzvah of Yibum only applies to him, not to her, so then the mitzvah on the mitzvah asay is also Eina Shava Bakol. We're looking to say Yibum, the mitzvah, should supersede the Isser. And we say, no, the Isser is Eina Shava Bakol. So it's true. That a weak prohibition that doesn't apply to everybody can be superseded. But a more severe Isser, maybe not. Wait, but even the mitzvah is Eina Shava Bakol. The mitzvah itself is also not applicable to everybody because the woman is not included in this. So the Aruch HaNer says, from here we see that the mitzvah, that Tosfos at least is going to learn that the mitzvah applies to the woman as much as it applies to the man. The mitzvah of Yibum, it is her mitzvah as much as it is his mitzvah. And I think that may be a part of the discussion that we saw last week that Tosfos learns in Losachsav, that she can't be forced into the Yibum. It does not, he doesn't say like Rashi, that we close off her ability to make an argument for herself, but rather she doesn't have to do the Yibum, but she could be left in no Yibum, no Chalitza. And that's what Lesachsim is. Don't lock her into in limbo, because it is her mitzvah. It is her mitzvah as much as his mitzvah. In any case, the Aruch HaNer brings a raya from this Tosfos that what is not accepted by all, but nevertheless, it is a seemingly good raya from this Tosfos that he would hold that the mitzvah of Yibum is not only on the surviving brother, but also on the widow herself to continue the marriage of her first husband. She has a mitzvah as much as he has a mitzvah in Yibum. On Sunday, we talked about the concept of Yeshnam B'Sheila and by Nazir. What is the concept of Nazir? Just to review quickly, there are three ways of seeing what is the Isser of Nazir. Is it an Isser on himself? He becomes a Nazir and therefore he is now prohibited in certain things, let's say eating grapes. Or is it on the Chefza? Are the grapes prohibited to him? They now become like non-kosher food. Or, and so the distinction to really understand that is like not eating on Yom Kippur is a prohibition on the person. The food's still kosher. There's no Isser on the food. It's a person is not allowed to do it. It's an Isser Gavra. You're not allowed to eat. The Nazir would be the same. Or is it more like non-kosher food? The person's allowed to eat the grapes, but the grapes are prohibited. And then we saw the Chiddush that it could actually be that it's neither of those. The prohibition applies to everybody. However, it is not a prohibition, but rather it's a status. Like a Kohen is a status, so to Nazir is a status. A person accepts upon themselves a certain status. With that status comes obligations. And that would answer the question of why we would say that Nazir is Shava Bakol. Nazir applies to everybody, even though that the person, not everybody is accepted upon themselves to be a Nazir. It applies to everyone in as much as the prohibitions apply to every Nazir. Not everybody is in the status of Nazir, but you could be, and it'll apply to everybody. So we talked about this more at length on Sunday. Just want to repeat that. The Gemara then goes, okay, so we're going to go back to learning from tzitzis. That indeed, we're going to learn from tzitzis, and we're going to try and find a mufna somewhere, somehow. So the Gemara says, really, we're going to learn from tzitzis, and you said that we need an extra pasuk. According to Rabbi Shmuel, we have the extra pasuk of Tzemer Upishtim, but according to the Chachamim, who say that all garments are obligated, four-corner garments are obligated in tzitzis. So then we don't have Tzemer Upishtim as extra. So what are we going to learn it from? So the Gemara tried to learn it from Gedilim. Gedil. They say, no, we need that to tell you how many strings. So then we're going to learn it from Shatnez, Tzemer Pishtim, Yachtav, Lamali. What do we need the Yachtav for? So we're saying we need that also for Tochev Shtei Tekifos. That even just sewing two is going to be Shatnez. And then the Gemara says, so what about the word Shatnez? We have we need that to teach you Achi Yeshua Tavi V'Naz. So we started mentioning on Sunday. I just want to flesh this out a little bit. According to Tosfos brings a sheet of the Rivan, which is a sheet of Rashi, that the concept of Shua Tavi V'Naz is a concept of you have to comb the wool and the linen as one, and then you spin. That's the Shua. Tavi, you spin the wool and linen as one, and then you either weave or twist into a string, into a thread, and also the wool and linen as one. And Tosfos asked, how can it be that that's true if Shatnez means that it's really an interwoven garment? Well, we just said that the Yechayev, even just putting two, you have a full linen garment and a full wool garment, and you just sew it together, two sews, and it's already over. So the Mizrahi on Chumash, on the Pirush Rashi on Chumash, and many other Achronim deal with this. Reb Chaim Alevi also deals with this at length. The concept is that Rashi and the Rivan and these Rishonim are going to learn, and it seems that the Rambam learns this way as well, that there are two separate prohibitions in Shatnez. There's Shatnez, where you interweave and intertwine all of the threads. You've made wool and linen as one garment. Not only as one garment, but the combing of it together and the spinning of it was together. It's really an interwoven garment. And that's what we have in the Big Day Kahuna. Each thread of the coin of the Kahuna threads was a wool, a purple wool, a blue wool, a red wool, and a linen, and those were twisted into thread. So it's actually each thread itself had both wool and linen in the thread, and that is not only going to be prohibited to be worn, but the garment itself that is going to be an isser. There's an isser on the garment itself, according to Rashi. That itself is going to be a non-kosher garment. Most shatnez that we talk about is not really shatnez. The concept, the word shatnez, according to Rashi, is the twisting of making threads combine. Most of our garments, when we talk about that, that's not shatnez, but rather it happens to have some wool and it happens to have some linen. That is only going to be shtei tekifos. That's going to be the first concept of yachtav, of having something combined together, a wool and a linen. And in fact, in our Gemara, the fact that we have the two teachings tells us that there are two concepts. And that's the way Rashi and the Ravana are going to learn this, that there are two concepts in Shatnez, in the mitzvah Shatnez. One is the combining of a wool garment and a linen garment, or the sewing of a linen thread into a wool garment. And then aside from that, there's going to be another prohibition of Shatnez, of creating an interwoven, intertwined wool and linen garment. While we're in this, so the mitzvah that supersedes that over here in the Shatnez is going to be for a tzitzis, where Shatnez supersedes is superseded by the mitzvah tzitzis, is not by weaving wool and linen together. It's not going to be Shatnez. It's actually going to be the first concept of putting two threads through, because you can have two wool threads in your tzitzis, and you're going to stick it through the hole in your beged, and that's going to create a shatnez. I mentioned this last week, just in short, the even though that the mitzvah applies to wool and linen, to wool threads, because techelas must be wool, it does not apply if it's not real techelas. If it's kala ilan, if it is going to be another blue dye that is similar, it will not apply to the mitzvah. And in fact, the Rashi learns, the Gemara Menachos, that because of this aseido halosase, where you're allowed to wear tcheles of wool in a linen garment, and if you have a fake blue dyed wool, you're not allowed to wear it. Rashi says you're not allowed to wear any fake blue dyed wool, because the Gemara says let it be. It's no worse than just having a white thread. So what that it's dyed blue and it's not the real techeles? It's no worse than having a white thread. So the Gemara says over there, no, we're concerned that maybe you will think that it actually is techeles, and you're going to put it into a linen garment, which you're allowed to do. But since it's not real techeles, you're not allowed to do it, and you're going to transgress the shatnez shalom kamitzvah, not when you don't have the mitzvah. So Rashi learns over there that if you don't have a correct techeles, you're not allowed to wear the blue threads on account of this, because maybe you're going to end up putting it into a linen garment, which is shatnez, and you're not allowed to do it. People ask often, how come now that we may have found the techeles, the blue, there are multiple opinions which creature it is. The Radzina said it was a certain type of squid or a cuttlefish. According to Rabbi Herzog, it was a certain type of snail. According to some chacham today, it's a different type of snail. Either way, why just take one and put it on? What's the loss? At least maybe you'll fulfill that mitzvah. No, but the fear is if you think that you have tcheles, as the Gemara says in Menachos, over here, it's a asay say only if you have the asay, only if you're fulfilling the tcheles. Then it would supersede the lav of shatnez, of two tekifos, of putting two threads through. But if you don't know that you actually have the correct blue thread, and it may not be, after all, there are three opinions which one it is, right? And it may not even be that. We mentioned this multiple times, especially when we were learning Menachos in Daf Yomi, that there are opinions that hold that everything that was used for the Mishkan, well, no, the Gemara says everything that was used for the Mishkan came from a kosher animal. There are opinions in the Rishonim that say that's not only for the materials, but even for the dyes had to come from kosher. And since it had to come from a kosher, and obviously the cuttlefish and the snails are not kosher, they couldn't be the source of the dye for the techeles in the Mishkan. So at least there is an opinion that it's not a kosher, that it's not the correct techeles, and then we have a prohibition of wearing a non-techeles blue thread, because you may come to do shatnez that Gemara talks about over here, of putting two threads through a linen garment. So we're going to stop in a couple of minutes so we can go to Mincha. Just want to get to the last concept over here. The Gemara goes through, says, okay, so we have asay d'chalosasay by the mitzvah of tzitzis, but what about the asay d'chalosasay of kares? And the Gemara asks from bris milah, and then the Gemara asks from Pesach, and from bris milah, the Gemara says no, you can't learn from bris milah because bris is something that has two isur, multiple mitzvahs. It's nichrusu aleh yud gimel brisos, and it has 13 covenants, 13 brisos with it. Whereas Pesach, he said no, Pesach you can't learn from because Pesach is kares. So the Rishonim ask, well, so is bris. Bris is also kares. So Tosfos Rishonim says no. Bris is not kares, because bris only applies to kares at the end of one's life. And this is an interesting question. A person has an obligation to be circumcised, to have a bris milah done. Early on in their life, the mitzvah was to do the bris, but not when they were 8 days old. It was not their mitzvah. It was they're 8 days old. The mitzvah was on their father to do it. The mitzvah on them only becomes a mitzvah when they become a gadol, when they become an adult. At that point is when the kares would kick in. And the Tosfos Rishonim says it actually only kicks in at the end of their life if they didn't do it. Because at any moment that they're alive, they still have the possibility of doing it. There's no deadline. So therefore, you can't say that it's kares. In fact, if we think about it, the mitzvah of bris milah, where it supersedes Shabbos, when we say the asay d'chalosasay, that mitzvah actually never applies. It never applies in when the mitzvah is on the person himself, when there's kares, because only a mitzvah, only bris on the correct day, on the 8th day, is supersedes Shabbos, is doicha Shabbos. A bris shelo bizmana, not in the correct time when it's late, it actually does not supersede Shabbos. So you never have a kares that's of a bris that's going to supersede Shabbos. However, tesim milo pesach sheken kares. But the Gemara does say you can't learn from both of them combined, Milah and Pesach, because they are kares. Wait, so now the Gemara is using the concept of kares from Milah as well. So at first, when the Gemara said, let's learn it from bris milah, the Gemara says, no, we can't, because bris milah is 13 brisas. Then when the Gemara says, let's learn it combined from bris and Pesach, I say, no, those two are severe because they have kares. So why are you using kares now for bris and you didn't use it beforehand? So this is an important concept in just understanding drushes when we're trying to learn a drush. When we're learning from something directly itself, so then you have to have some a valid or a correct dichui, a pircha. You have to say, no, this is different because of something that actually applies in this case. Whereas when we're learning from a memetzinu, what is a memetzinu? The memetzinu is saying, I have two mitzvahs, Pesach and Mila. And I want to say, just as the two of them, I have this concept of a Seder Chalos, saving those kares, so too other things. Well, then I'm looking for a common denominator. Any common denominator is sufficient to say, these have kares and nothing else. Even though that the kares won't apply in this case, but it's enough to just find something common between the two and say, no, you know why these two are different? Because they have a common denominator, big shekain yashna b'kares, that the two have kares. Even though the kares applies differently. Pesach would apply only on the main mitzvah of Pesach Rishon, and it has a deadline. If you missed it, there's kares. Bris Milah applies only to an adult and maybe only at the end of their life. But nevertheless, it's within the concept of kares that's enough of a common denominator to be a pircha for a memetzinu, to be a question on a memetzinu. Again, I want to say that today's limud is for the schus of Zev's mother, Zev Shoshana Pesach Chaya Rachel Bas Leah, should have a refuah shalema, and all the healing should come easily and should come quickly and completely.